Hello everyone, welcome back to the course Database Management System. In last module we have seen ER model. In that we have seen entities, relationships, relationship sets and various types of attributes. Now we will concentrate on ER diagrams. The overall logical structure of database can be expressed graphically by ER diagram, which is built up from following components such as entities are represented using rectangles, attributes are represented using ellipse, relationships among entities represented using diamond, link attributes to entities and entity set to relationship are represented using lines, multi-valued attribute are represented using double ellipse, derived attribute are represented using dashed ellipse, weak entity set represented using double rectangle, and primary key attribute are represented using underline at the name of an attribute. Now we will focus on what do you mean by weak entity set and strong entity set. The entity set that does not have sufficient attributes to define a primary key are called weak entity sets. The entity set that have sufficient attribute to define the primary key are called strong entity sets. In such case, the weak entity set has to be dependent on the strong entity set. Strong entity set is also called identifying or owner entity set. The relationship that associating weak entity set and with strong entity set is called identifying relationship. The identifying relationship is many to one from weak entity set to identifying entity set, and the sharing of weak entity set is in the relation is total. The weak entity does not have any primary key but a discriminator, that is set of attribute in weak entity set is used to distinguish among the rows. The primary key of weak entity set is combination of primary key of strong entity set and discriminator of weak entity set. Representation of weak and strong entity sets by ER diagram. Here weak entity is represented using double rectangle, identifying relationship is represented using double diamond, the total participation of weak entity set is represented using double lines, and the discriminator of weak entity set is represented using dashed underline at the primary key attribute of strong and weak entity set. Now let's again revise what do you mean by weak entity set and strong entity set. The entity set that does not have sufficient attributes to define the primary key are called weak entity set. On the other hand, the entity set that have sufficient attribute to define primary key are called strong entity set. In such case, the weak entity set are dependent on strong entity set. Let's understand this using this example. Take the example of loan and payment. Here, payment entity is completely dependent on loan entity. Here, payment is a weak entity set and loan is a strong entity set, because कस्टमर कब पे करेगा, पेमेंट कब करेगा, जब वो लोन पर्टिकुलर बैंक से लोन लेगा. अगर उसने लोन नहीं लिया है तो वो पेमेंट नहीं करेगा. इसीलिए पेमेंट इज कंप्लीटली डिपेंडेंट ऑन लोन. इफ देयर इज लोन, देन ओनली द पेमेंट entity is existence of payment entity is dependent. Therefore, payment entity is a weak entity and loan entity is a strong entity. Here, the complete participation of loan payment relationship is represented using double lines, because payment is completely dependent on loan entity. Here, discriminators known as payment number, payment date, payment amount is represented using dashed underlines. Here loan number and amount is attributes of loan entity, which is strong entity set. This is all about weak entity and strong entity sets. Now we have practiced the how to draw ER diagrams. Now take an example. Construct an ER diagram for a car insurance company that has a set of customers. Each customer owns one or more cars. Each car has associated with 0 to any number of recorded accidents. This problem we have to draw using ER diagram. Okay. Now we start formation of ER diagram step by step. First of all, we have to identify which are the main entities in this particular problem. In this particular problem, there is a first entity which is known as customer. Now we have to identify the attributes of this entity. Which are the attributes the customer entity have? Here customer entity has the attributes like, to identify a particular customer we should have customer ID, customer name, customer city. Second entity is car, because we design a car insurance company's ER diagram. Now which attributes we need to identify a particular car? So the attributes for car entity are car ID and model. And third attribute is accidents. Third entity is accidents. Accidents is a weak entity set because accidents is completely dependent on car. Therefore accidents are represented using double rectangle because it is weak entity set. Also observe CID and customer ID are represented using underline because these are the primary key attributes of particular customer and car entities. Now accidents, this entity has attributes accident ID which is represented using underline because it is a primary key attribute of accidents entity. Then date, day, then street and city. Now these are the entities and their attributes. Now we have to represent relationships among these entities. So what is the relationship between car and customer? Customer, car. We name a particular relationship between car and customer is car customer and represented using diamonds because relationships are represented using diamonds. And the relationship between car and accidents is named as car ACC underscore ID. These are the relationship between car and accident. Now we have to represent the mapping cardinality of particular entity sets. Now one customer can have many cars, therefore the relationship car customer represented using one to many car, and the car and accidents also represented using one to many mapping cardinality because one car can have multiple accidents. Therefore this is represented using one to many relationship. Understood? This is the process of drawing ER diagram of a particular problem. First identify the main entities, then identify the attributes of that particular entities, and then represent the relationship between these entity sets. Okay, now let's take an example. Consider a trucking company which is responsible for picking shipments for warehouses. of retail chain and deliver the shipments to the individual store location. A truck may carry several shipments in a single trip and deliver it to the multiple stores. Now we have to first identify the entities, and that first entity is trucks. To identify trucks, we need truck number, weight and truck volume. Another entity is shipment. To identify shipment, we need ship number and ship date. The next entity is warehouse, which is dependent entity, therefore it is known as weak entity set, therefore we represent it using double rectangle. Warehouse is identified using warehouse number and location. And last entity is stores. Stores are identified using store number, store location. Now we have to represent the relationship between shipment and trucks. Trucks carry shipments. Then what is the relationship between trucks and warehouse? Trucks delivers warehouse. And what is the relationship between warehouse and stores? Warehouse has stores. Okay. Now many trucks can deliver shipments to many warehouse. Therefore, it is represented using many to many mapping cardinality. Now, one warehouse can has many stores. Therefore, it is represented using one to many mapping cardinality. And one truck can carry multiple shipments. Therefore, it is represented using one to many shipments. This is the ER diagram for shipping company. Now let's take the example of library management system. In that, first we have to identify entities. First entity is books. Books are identified using book ID, author, title, price. Second entity is publisher. Publishers are identified using publisher ID and address and its name. Then library members are there. Therefore, member is a next entity. Member entity has attributes member ID, membership date, expiry date of membership, member name. Now we have to represent the relationship between books and publisher. Books and publisher, books are published by publisher. Therefore, the relationship is named as published by. Then the relationship between books and members is represented using borrowed by, because books are borrowed by members of that particular library. Therefore, the relationship name as borrowed by. Also, this relationship is represented using identified using issue date and return date, because when a particular member issue a particular book from library, then he should return a particular book at a particular return date. This is a library management system ER diagram. Now let's take the example of hospital management system. Now first entity is patient, which is identified using patient ID, patient name, patient diagnosis and address. Second entity is hospital, hospital ID, hospital address, hospital name are the attributes of hospital entity. Then doctor with attributes doctor ID, doctor name, qualification, salary. And medical record is another entity which has record ID, admit date, when the date of admission of a particular patient at a particular hospital, and medical problem. Now we have to represent relationship between patient and hospital. Patient admitted in hospital, therefore we represent it using relationship named as admitted in. Then hospital and doctor relationship represented using has, and patient and medical record is represented using has. Here many patient can be admitted in a single hospital, therefore it is represented using many to one relationship. Then one hospital can have many doctor, therefore it is also represented using one to many relationship. And one patient can have multiple medical records, therefore it is also represented using one to many relationship. This is a hospital management system. You have to practice more and more with another examples like college, university management system, institute management system, airline reservation system, railway reservation system, etc. So practice more by drawing ER diagrams. First identify the main entities of a particular problem, then identify the attributes, and then represent the relationship between a particular entities. Thank you.